Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and it's been over 100 days or 4 months since the iPhone Air launched, and it seems to have a fairly strong following now, but many don't like it as well. I actually love the iPhone Air, but it certainly has its flaws, so after 100 days, is it a flop or a silent success? Well, that depends who you ask. So I've used it many times prior to using the 17 Pro Max. I recently switched back to it so I could take a look, but I'm up in the air about it. Now the first thing is the design. Still, like I've mentioned before, holding it feels like the future. I think it still holds true. It feels different than any other iPhone. It's super thin. It's also lightweight. It has a strong titanium frame and has a really wonderful texture, especially on the back. If you're not using a case with it, and if you are using an iPhone Air, I would advise against using a case so you get the full experience of the thinness. Now, nitpicking the overall design, the only thing that bothers me about it is the camera plateau or the camera bump, how it sort of sticks out in two different levels, and also doesn't match the radius of the phone itself like the iPhone 17s do. But that's something I'm just nitpicking. It's not that big of a deal, and you don't feel it either when you're holding on to it. So when you're holding on to it, your hand lies here, especially even if you have large hands like me, you don't really feel the camera plateau at all. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's just something if you turn it over. Also, it does pick up a lot of fingerprints, especially on the black model that you can see here, but this has a really wonderful texture, and I just like the feel of it overall. So the overall experience is really great, just hanging on to it. It feels super durable, super rigid thanks to titanium, and it's overall pretty great. When it comes to the size, I think the size is a great compromise. Not only do you have the thinness, but it's slightly larger than the iPhone 17 Pro and slightly smaller than the 17 Pro Max if that's too large. It's also a lot lighter. The 17 Pro Max just feels really heavy, and switching back recently, it's really nice just to pick up this phone. It's super thin and of course comes with quite a few compromises. But first, let's talk about the glass, scratches, and durability. When it comes to the back glass, you'll see here there's a couple scratches on it. I don't know where they came from. It's not a big deal to me, but you can feel those with your fingernail. But those are the only scratches I have, with a little bit of wear around the camera bump. And that's pretty typical if we take a look at my 17 Pro Max or any of the 17s really. Usually around the camera bump, they start to wear out. So that's something just from setting it down without a case on it, and sometimes down at the bottom, but I don't really see any wear there. But overall, it's holding up very, very well. As far as the display and scratches, there isn't a single one on it. At least I can't find any. Even with the display off, I don't see a single scratch on it, not even micro scratches, and that's a testament to Apple's latest update when it comes to the overall glass, Ceramic Shield's latest version. It's just holding up incredibly well. The same is true of the sapphire lens on the actual camera. Again, no scratches whatsoever. You can see there's nothing there. So it's really holding up well, and let's go ahead and take a look at the screen. The display is the same great display we have on all iPhone 17 models this year. It's the first year they haven't compromised, where they all go up to 3000 nits, they're all high enough resolution, and they're vibrant and color accurate. They have great viewing angles, and when you're using them outside, they're just incredibly easy to see in bright sunlight. Even in the brightest of sunlight, they seem to hold up well. Now with this phone, being that it's the iPhone Air and it doesn't have the vapor chamber like the 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max, it can get quite hot over time and maybe bring down the display brightness. However, I haven't been in a situation where it's done that, but it has gotten very, very hot as the processor's here in the camera plateau. Now, the one compromise that many people are complaining about is probably the most, at least, is the speaker. We have a lack of speaker. We just have one at the top and nothing at the bottom. We do have speaker holes here, but for whatever reason, Apple did not include a speaker there, and they're just microphones. This is a compromise that isn't really a problem if you're watching vertical video or just holding the phone in portrait mode. But once you go to horizontal or landscape mode, that's where it becomes a problem, is there's no speaker on the bottom. That's something that doesn't really bother me after using it for a time, but when you switch to a 17 Pro Max and then switch back, you definitely notice the difference. So it's not that big of a deal, especially if you use AirPods, but it is one of those compromises I think they should fix with the next version. The camera is the other big compromise. There's, of course, one more, but the camera itself, just being one 48 megapixel camera, can sometimes be an issue. For the most part, it's not. The only time it has been is when I want an ultra wide, and somehow I deleted the camera here, but we'll go into it here. And having an ultra wide on your camera is very nice when you're trying to capture larger things. I don't really use zoom past about 2x typically, so that's not much of an issue, at least for me. But if you use ultra wide and you use telephoto, of course, that's going to be a big problem. The front-facing camera, though, is no compromise this year. It's the same camera that we have on the iPhone 17 Pro. And if we switch over to video, This is a video from the iPhone Air. We have the same microphones for the most part, the same 18 megapixel camera, and also we can switch this to landscape mode. So if we switch here, now we're in landscape mode. You can see my office behind me, and this just gives you a wider perspective if you want to hold it vertically while recording video. And again, you can hear the audio from it. So no compromises here. It's pretty great overall when it comes to the forward-facing camera. Of course, the biggest compromise, if you don't care about the camera or the speaker, is the battery. I think that's the number one question people ask is it enough battery life throughout the day? And that really depends on who you are. Now, for me, it's okay for the most part. It gets me through the day with normal use. But if I do anything outside of normal, basically film a video or maybe watch a lot of video, then it can become an issue earlier than later. So you'll see I'm at 75%. I was recently driving and I'm at 100% capacity with 65 cycles. The cycle count is so high because I've used this a lot and had to charge it a lot more. So even though just using it over a month, you might only have 30 cycles, sometimes you need to charge it twice a day depending on use. Of course, you do have the MagSafe Battery Pack you can use, which then technically gives it more battery than what you would have with an iPhone 17 Pro Max, but again, it's not great. So if we take a look at battery usage, you'll see today I've had 1 hour and 3 minutes of screen active time, 2 hours and 45 minutes of screen idle time, and used 39% of the battery. Not really that great. Yesterday, 5 hours and 14 minutes of screen active time, 3 hours and 25 minutes of screen idle time, and used 121%, meaning I charged it multiple times, but I did have probably about 4 hours on battery. So I'm finding about 4 hours of screen on time with battery. If that's not enough, I would consider another phone or definitely pick up some sort of MagSafe battery pack or a third-party one. Now, even though this is the iPhone Air and technically a little bit slower than the iPhone 17 Pro Max, for the most part, it doesn't feel very slow. If I scroll in the app library here, it still has ProMotion, it has that 120 Hertz display, and it also has that PWM option to turn that off. Quickly, let's talk about PWM, and then we'll take a look at speed. So if we go into accessibility, display and text size, of course, we have that option for display pulse smoothing. You can turn off PWM, making this much easier on your eyes if you're sensitive to that. So if you've been waiting, you're using an LCD display, an iPhone 11, for example, you can switch to this, turn on that option. Maybe it uses a little more power. I should test that a little bit more. But using this, it really puts your eyes at ease. No longer do I get headaches, nauseated, or have eye strain. It just seems to fix that problem for me. So let me know if you've used one of these and turned that on, but I definitely think this is a good option, and I'm glad to see Apple added it, and it's been great over the past few months with it. When it comes to speed and performance, well, we do have that 12 gigs of RAM. You can see that in benchmarks with 11.5 gigabytes, and of course the A19 Pro CPU, but it is downclocked, it seems a little bit, or it just can't get rid of the heat, so it has to throttle a little bit. That's due to not having the vapor chamber like I mentioned, and having the camera plateau have all of the processing power right up here. It does get very hot from time to time, around 40 degrees Celsius here, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can feel it, but only if you slide your hand up the back. So while you're using it, even if it's intensive tasks, if you put your finger up here, you'll feel the heat off of it. If you don't, you won't even notice it. Also, when you're using it, most of the time it's fast. The only slowdown, I think, is from the OS itself with iOS 26 bugs. So this one's actually running iOS 26.2 at the time of the video, and just opening things such as the camera, going into different applications, whether it's podcasts or other things, it's generally okay, with the exception of occasional slowdowns, especially if it's using adaptive power or low power mode. With those options on, it can slow the processor down, and occasionally when you scroll, there'll be some jitter, or when you have liquid glass animations, again, the same thing happens. Signal strength is also something worth talking about. You'll see I have 2 bars of signal. If I turn off Wi-Fi here, it's 5G UC on T-Mobile, and if we go ahead and run a speed test, I'm behind a brick wall, but it's doing quite well, and this is Apple's C1X modem, so no real issues here, 400 megabits per second down. We'll wait for it to go to upload. And we have about 7 to 10 megabits per second up. The highest I saw was 8, so it's not great, but pretty good considering I'm behind a wall, and I am getting a little bit faster speeds on the 17 Pro Max with usually about 1 extra bar of signal strength. So if you're in an area of low signal, you may be better off with maybe the Pro or even the regular iPhone 17 this year. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, I really have had no issues with. I do see from time to time it won't be on Wi-Fi for some reason and will jump onto Wi-Fi when I unlock the phone. This seems to be an iOS bug we've seen for years. And one other thing that has to do with speed I wanted to mention is when connected to CarPlay, specifically on iOS 26.2 with the iPhone Air, it seems a little sluggish at times. So if I go to open music on CarPlay, sometimes it takes a few seconds to open. The same is true with podcasts and the overall signal when I go to play something. Sometimes it doesn't work, then I have to reload the app and it works fine. Now, even with CarPlay, Bluetooth has been pretty good for me, but it does typically disconnect right after I connect it. Then it reconnects and it's fine after that. Why it has that initial disconnect, I'm not sure, but I'm hearing this from many people. However, Bluetooth connectivity with things such as AirPods Pro 3 have been great. Really no issue. You can see how fast it opened up when I connected, and I haven't had any issues, especially with the latest updates with AirPods Pro 3. So I've used this extensively. No real issues when it comes to Bluetooth. It connects like you would expect. No drops other than that initial CarPlay drop. So the experience with Bluetooth seems great. Apple's own modem is doing well when it comes to N1 with the overall Wi-Fi and everything else. So really no complaints there. I think the biggest issue is probably the modem that just isn't as good as what we have with the Qualcomm modem in the 17 Pro phones. Now, there is rumor of an iPhone Air 2 coming maybe later this year in 2026. It could add an ultra-wide camera, maybe a larger battery, but keep the same form factor. I would definitely welcome something like that. It doesn't charge super fast either because of its overall thinness and being able to not dissipate heat as well as maybe a 17 Pro with a vapor chamber. But just using it day to day is really a nice experience if you don't need the most power all of the time. Now, many have said this could be half of the iPhone Fold Apple's releasing, and that's probably true where they're testing out some materials, thinness, and everything else, as it's said to be titanium like this, and possibly a folding display that's more maybe horizontal than vertical, but we'll have to see if it's more of a book style or sort of the current style that Samsung has. Now, iOS 26 is really what's letting down iPhone at this point with glitches and things throughout, like I already mentioned with Apple CarPlay. Sometimes people are having issues with the iPhone or the phone just not working properly. Sometimes it's just slow. People have had issues with Signal throughout, and it's been plagued with issues. But I do think it's going to get better over the near future, as there's been some changes internally at Apple that hopefully will stabilize things with the overall experience. So is the iPhone Air a failure or a quiet success? Well, that really depends on who you ask. Is the battery good enough? Well, like I mentioned before, if you're home on Wi-Fi much of the time and charge when driving, it really should be more than enough. If you're someone that travels frequently where you have low signal, this isn't enough without the battery pack. But if you're someone that frequently charges your phone throughout the day because it just won't last, again, iPhone Air is not for you. Also, apps sometimes that you use can certainly make a difference. If you play a lot of games, go for the Pro. If you record a lot of video, go for the Pro. The Pro has the best cameras, it has more camera options, and of course you have telephoto and everything else, along with some Pro video modes that you may benefit from. If none of those things matter to you, and you're a casual user, or even a power user that doesn't really unplug your phone very much, this is going to be great with the exception of taking a long trip where you have long durations between charging. So depending on your use case really makes this a great phone or not. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue to use this full time, and I may switch back to the 17 Pro Max. I'm really up in the air about it, no pun intended, but I love the Air. I love the idea of it, but it is lacking in some ways where I really wish I had the ultra-wide from time to time, and that extra battery when traveling to CES, for example, is very helpful. That's why I use the 17 Pro Max there. But let me know what you think of the iPhone Air. If you've picked one up, what color are you using, and do you think Apple should make another, or do you think they'll get rid of it very soon? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do, and if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.